obviously a lot of people in the tech scene in Leeds have been brought together by the Hay events, and more recently All Day Hay, which I'm very glad to be a part of now. But it's
roped you into that nicely.
Yeah, that's it. Got a basement full of like plinths and wires and all sorts.
Yeah, thanks for storing that.
Right. Yeah, no worries.
I'll get a storage invoice at the end of the year, I'm sure. Hello and welcome to Off Script. On this episode, we're talking about the future of software engineering leadership, and this is part 2 of that series.
Hello, welcome back. This is part 2 of part 2 of 2.
Yeah, everything's fine. It is Friday, late on a Friday, and
it's 4:30 p.m. on a Friday. This is the last brain cell that I'm able to use.
And looking outside, it looks like it's the end of the world.
Yeah, it's dark.
But we are talking about some interesting things related to the Future of Software Engineering Leadership event.
Yes, and
that we talked about.
Yeah, and the stuff we talked about was kind of about the end of the world, sustainability, and we had some questions from the audience.
Yes,
because we've just been chatting about AI, and I love AI.
Yeah,
as does Jack, and you do as well.
I'm growing to love it.
Yeah, growing to love it. And someone in the audience was like, well, what about the energy concerns around AI? To which I said, yeah, it's bad, isn't it?
Which is true.
Yeah, it is bad. Training these massive frontier models is eating up a lot of electricity.
Yeah.
And I didn't have it on my scorecard, but yeah, that's now causing internet companies like Google and Amazon and Microsoft to reinvest in nuclear power, which,
yeah,
good.
Yeah,
for me, I think that's good.
I think was it the OpenAI? They're asking the government to invest in some crazy data centers or power. What's the word?
Yeah,
powered station. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. That was officially the last brain cell. It's gone.
Yeah, I think I heard it going pop.
Just a small aneurysm. But yeah, I think it's an interesting challenge. So, I mean, you talked a lot about what you're doing at Parallax with the sort of solar panel installations on the roof to try and offset the energy consumption.
Yeah, so we're carbon negative and times 2. So just to be safe, we've just doubled it.
Yeah.
To offset it twice. And Lawrence and an external consultant, they've spent a long time doing our sustainability plan.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks great. It's good. And we've offset all of our cloud usage and obviously all of our office usage. And OpenAI have said they're offsetting all of their model training usage.
From now on?
I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but they say it's carbon neutral, but I'm not sure.
I don't know if building your own power stations counts as carbon neutral, but yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting proposition. I remember, so it was Rich, our friend Rich Mack, who asked one of the questions around the energy demands of AI and raised a very valid point around the sort of impact it had. I think one of my responses was around innovation and the speed of innovation, though, and how innovation takes time to get to a point where it is like either cost effective or energy efficient. And we talked a lot about how hard drives used to be just massive and inefficient and really difficult to work with. And over time, obviously, they've just become so tiny that they can fit on SD cards and things like that. And I sort of want to point out that I think we're at the start of that innovation curve, and I think it's going to get better. We're looking at how we can run AI on device in a more energy efficient way.
Yeah, I mean, you're already charging your phone. They're already the GPUs sat there ready for you to use, and they're quite efficient. These local models as well. So local inference. I think we're going to see a big uptick in. Now, Apple Intelligence is in the wild, and it's okay, but this is V1, and Apple are working on an LLM version of Siri, which I imagine they'll want a lot of that to run on device as well.
Yep.
So, it's quite exciting times, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I I really enjoyed what someone said on sustainability, which is you want someone to care, put it on a graph. For nerds, data is persuasive, which was very true.
Yeah. No, I think that was something I said, wasn't it? Yeah, like if you can chart and measure it and put it on a graph, people are really going to then look to change that. And our carbon reduction plan has lots of nice graphs in it, and we've got live graphs of our energy usage, which anyone can log into in the office. I think maybe only 3 or 4 of us do, but
that does sound like something you'd say, to be fair. So.
But yeah, we can see day by day how we're tracking, and we've also had someone come in for there's different scopes of emissions. So obviously electricity usage, but there's also people travelling to the office. There's our flights for meetings. We've got some people in Norway at the moment for a client. That all needs to be factored in, and refrigerants and all kinds of things, and it's all in this big report that we put together. But if you measure it, at least you can start tracking.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So we went on to sort of talk more on the event around leadership development, which was sort of the big topic, I think. We talked a lot about some of the challenges facing leaders in software engineering spaces, today, and I think there's a really interesting conversation with the audience around people's own reflections of what it's like to be a leader in the current climate. It's a really interesting time in technology. There sort of is demand for certain roles, but not for others, and there's definitely challenging financial times for certain businesses, and depending on the sort of business model you've got, we're seeing just a really interesting time in tech, I think.
Yeah, I think, as we've seen with some of the bigger consultancies, it is tough times. I think Hedgehog have done a few rounds now.
Yeah.
Obviously, recent other rounds at other consulting firms. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, but I think this is all the more reason to sort of double down and invest on how you lead your team, how just really review how you're doing business, and just make sure that you're sort of creating the best environment for talent to stick around, and obviously just for people to feel really comfortable in the workplace. And I think leadership development was a really interesting topic to touch on. We talked a lot about inclusive leadership behaviors, and just the sort of leadership styles that tend to result in high performing teams and happy teams. This high performing and happy are not always the same.
I think we touched a little bit on this. It hasn't come through on the notes as much, but almost like putting your own mask on first, and like making sure that you're okay in order to then serve others as well, I think is quite important, because we had a lot of questions around mental health and how people deal with anxiety and stuff as well, didn't we?
We did talk a lot about that, and it was interesting because we talked a lot about how it can be quite lonely sometimes in leadership positions, depending on the structure of your peers and your team. Like, you might be on an exec team, you might be on a board, or you might be within another leadership team, but sometimes you're not really in a situation where you have those close connections with other people in similar circumstances, and you're making decisions that impact people's work life, and that's really hard.
Yeah, that's it. And I think we suggested a few things, and the first thing my mind jumped to was exercise, which obviously we'd go for a little run now and then, but also the peer mentorship stuff that James runs with work.
That was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, which I think is really important. But just reaching out to other leaders and having a bit of a chin wag with those people, and sometimes venting, but it's often not. Doesn't feel like venting. It feels more like comparing notes and just getting comfortable with some difficult situations or options and things that you've got.
I think it's the classic thing where you feel like you're experiencing something that's very unique, and actually when you speak to other people around, like, we've seen that all over the place, or I know what you mean, but this is what we did, and actually it really helped. And just classic problem shared, problem solved sort of chat. Yeah,
that's it. Spoken a lot with John Milsom from Pitch here, who is a listener, so he'll no doubt ping us a note when he hears that. But he's quite good at sort of bouncing ideas off, and it's just good to get a different perspective, because although his business is very different from ours. Like it's like football, software, sportsy sort of stuff. It's all the same stuff. It's all the same problems.
Well, most things lead back to people.
Yeah.
And yeah, different companies have different, perspectives on those people problems. But I also, John's wonderful. Like I chatted to him a long time ago. Actually, went for lunch, but we talked about some of the things that our different companies were experiencing, and there's so many similarities. Whether it's a people problem that emerges in different ways, and you forget actually a lot of the sort of processes and things that we take for granted in software engineering are actually born out of maybe classical engineering practices, or just in time things from, was it Toyota way back in the day? And there's just so many blended like methods and theories from different industries that you can learn from, and I think that's really important. Why you should get a mentor, maybe not even in the same business as you, or like same industry even.
No, absolutely. And I think people sharing and exchanging sort of what works and what doesn't, I think is really helpful. And it's good.
Talking is good. Cool. So we touched a little bit on sort of tech tools and processes. Now, obviously, you need to be careful, like overly introducing tools and processes before you need them. But we talked a lot about some of our sort of favorite ways of doing this. I'm a big believer of feedback and structured feedback. And we talked a lot about Lattice, which is a really good like HR tool.
I remember that. That sounds really good.
It's really good. I'd really recommend having a look if you haven't seen it before. But saying that, it's been buggy as shit for me this week. But
jinxed it.
But in general, it's great, and it allows you to give structured feedback to team members. It can post that feedback into a Slack channel. I think you mentioned that in part one of this episode, actually. But
and is part of it the different sort of behaviour profiles, and people of different colours and that kind of stuff.
So you can look into sort of behaviour mapping and looking at the sort of shape of people within the organisation. But this is more about just like providing a consistent way to give feedback to employees, and even just stuff like making sure in one-to-ones you're talking about the right topics with your team, and just the sort of hygiene things that don't feel like mega important, but if you don't do them, you feel them in weird and wonderful ways because you've not spoken to your team properly in a while, or that sort of thing.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've got various tools, but we've got the progression framework, but then we've got this new progression tool which does have feedback mechanisms built into it, which we're yet to try, but it looks really good.
Oh, no. What's the tool for the framework?
I think it's called progression.co.
Nice.
But it looks good.
Yes, I mean, that's the other thing, just investing time into like properly designing your IC and M like management tracks, like individual contributor tracks, so you can show people how they can grow within the organization and how they can move into different roles if they want to.
Yeah, because you want people to feel like they don't have to go into management or leadership roles. Yes, if they're a really, really strong engineer, you want them to be progressing still. But we've talked about this on lots of different podcast episodes, haven't we?
Yeah. It's like you don't want to become a manager and just die as a manager, when actually you want to really excel as an individual contributor.
Like a principal engineer, where they're as high level as the highest person in the company, but they're just engineering, and that's absolutely fine. Yeah,
that's the thing. It's actually reward with pay, like someone who is the highest IC level as much as you would like a head of or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Super important.
Yeah.
So we also sort of touched on event culture, didn't we? And just how you can create inclusive spaces for teams to sort of exist in.
Well, this is your bread and butter. This is what you've been doing for the past 10 years, or maybe even longer.
14 years now. Yeah.
14 years, because I think the consistency is key, isn't it? And I think you did an amazing post about consistency creates. I can't remember what it was.
Consistency creates community, I believe.
Consistency creates community. That was it.
Yeah.
Alliterative, which means I couldn't remember it.
I need to work on my titles.
No, it was really good, and I think obviously a lot of people in the tech scene in Leeds have been brought together by the Hay events, and more recently All Day Hay, which I'm very glad to be a part of now. but it's
roped you into that nicely.
Yeah, that's it. Got a basement full of like plinths and wires and all sorts.
Yeah, thanks for storing that.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll get a storage invoice at the end of the year, I'm sure.
£1 per day. That's actually quite reasonable.
Okay, we can haggle off that. Yeah, I do think the sort of consistency with anything, like not just with events, but the sort of showing up and just being there to talk to people and to try and create a space for people to sort of exist in is important. And
yeah, and you make a point of like, you know, explaining the Pac-Man rule and like letting people into your circle when you're speaking, because you'll have seen this, experienced this at networking events. You go there and there's loads of little cliques and they're all in little circles of the people that they know. And you just stood there like a lemon and you're like, I can't really be asked.
Yeah.
Unless I'm drinking. And
then that confidence comes through.
Yeah, but it's not a great experience, is it?
But it's important for the organizer to set the tone there, right? And I think whether it's an organizer or a leader in an organization, like you've got to set the tone, which is actually we don't do that here. We leave these groups open. So if you want to go and say hello to new people, there's a route in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I learned that from Mark Teal, actually, who runs the On Tellerand, which is an amazing conference.
I mean, he's the most inclusive, lovely bloke that you'll ever meet, and he's great at all that stuff.
Gives amazing hugs as well, which is
wonderful.
He's just finished his Berlin edition of Beyond Tellerand, which is always an amazing event, like a one-day creative conference. I might have been two, actually. And the next one's in Düsseldorf, so you should definitely have a look there if you're not.
Nice.
Yeah.
Had the honour of being invited to speak and did speak there once, which was a really good experience for me. It's one of my first big talks.
Love it. He's just a great event organizer and just creator of communities. And yeah, I just tag along as I'm like, I run conferences too. Can I run?
He could drink you under the table as well.
Yeah, I remember leaving Berlin with a solid hangover. I actually missed my plane home. So yeah, that's that really.
Yeah, good effort.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess to wrap up, we sort of started to talk about challenges for future leaders, didn't we?
Yeah. I think it's going to be a challenging couple of years, to be honest. I think, especially, economic headwinds, AI, World War III. I think all these things are going to have some impact.
That small thing that you're dropping in there. Yeah, it's not a good time in the world for and it's really hard to get positive about some things, especially with the news of what's going on in the US at the moment. Especially, it's going to impact us all, like globally.
Yeah, and I can't believe Elon Musk's been appointed as the head of a department called Doge.
Oh my God,
a government department.
Well, he's clearly God.
It's not a real department though. It's just.
Yeah. Well, that's like when you go to your 2-year-old, like we're gonna play dress up. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're fine with that.
No, that bit's fine. But we did touch on some other challenges, which was addressing the gap between very vocal and very quiet team members. Which, I think the quote I sort of missaid on the night was, "Don't bother listening to loud people because you'll hear them." I didn't really mean it like that. But what I did mean was, you've got to work extra hard at listening to those quieter team members.
Yeah, I think it's about understanding not everyone wants to communicate in the same way, and just because they're quiet might not mean they don't have anything to say. And I think it's a really important thing to remember, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially from the neurodiversity angle, I think creating inclusive spaces is about ensuring that people can have that voice through different mediums, not just, some people just don't want to get up in front of the company and do a presentation on something they've done. And some people don't even want to be rewarded publicly for work they've done. And it's just important to understand the different mechanisms to reward.
Yeah, no, definitely. And part of the progression stuff, everyone has a document where we write how they prefer to receive praise and feedback.
Yeah.
And everyone's very, very different. I think, you just have to make sure you play into those different needs.
I think this is where you've got to, we had a point around keeping up with changes in the workplace and the different dynamics. I think, if you're an employee somewhere, you need to try and use those feedback mechanisms, because they're one of the only few ways that leadership can hear you sometimes in some certain organizations. And, it's really challenging when you don't receive feedback on something and you find out you might have got it wrong. And it's just really hard to know and to learn and to shape, future environments in a positive way when you're not hearing these things. So
yeah, I think what really hurts me is when you get some really unspecific but quite unhelpful feedback on something being shit in an anonymous feedback form. When we ask people to fill it out, but every now and then you get something that cuts a little bit, and you're like, well, that's not very actionable, and it's not what am I meant to do with it, and you haven't put a name on it, so I can't talk to you. So it's like,
this is good here. So you can get anonymous feedback and you can reply to it anonymously.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
It allows like a conversation to start happening. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's really hard.
Well, it's hard not to take it personally, and then you get sort of a wave of like, well, what am I meant to do about this?
yeah. It's sort of like, I'm sure it's cathartic for the complainer.
Yeah.
But it's really hard, because then what's happened is you've been made aware of a problem with no detail of what the problem is.
Yeah.
And you're hopefully expected to fix it, and that's really challenging because you care, you want to fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't know who it is or what the problem is.
Yeah.
This is the thing. So I think one of the big challenges in the future is just like, how do you generate positive feedback culture? And we talked a bit about Lattice previously, but I do think tools like that, I'm not getting paid from Lattice, sadly, but I do think tools like that allow that sort of channel to be open with employees and to talk about what's going on with them is really important.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
It cuts deep, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, but I just need to grow a pair and get on with it.
Well, or don't feel that frustration and anger and
yeah. I think you're allowed to have feelings as a leader, but you just you have to be more measured in how you sort of convey that.
I think so, but it is hard. This is one of the hardest things about leadership, is that some of your professional decisions make you judged on a personal level, and it's really, really hard.
Yeah, definitely. It's not going to be easy out there, but yeah, I think just keep chatting to people and keep thinking stuff through.
Yeah, I think, challenging few years ahead, definitely, but it's not been an easy few years as it stands anyway. So I think this is just the nature of running your own company.
Yeah, great.
But I do think, this event was really a really enjoyable event. We got a lot of time to sort of reflect with people from really loads of different roles in tech. And yeah, I think it was quite good for us to reflect as well on how we do things and things that we can learn from each other. So yeah, definitely worth doing.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you very much for listening. And that concludes the second part of Future of Software Engineering Leadership.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers. Thanks for listening to another episode of Off Script. You've been listening to the Future of Software Engineering Leadership. Hit subscribe for more episodes in the future, and we'll see you next time.